Welcome to episode 549 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and he's Emile Evanesian. And Emile, the last time we spoke, Barca had just come off 2 5-0 wins, one of those against Real Betis. So it's a bit of positive deja vu, though this one was only 4-2. And I'm hoping that after this match, that things were a bit better than the last time we spoke.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any takeaways from this, I think we should just speak more frequently because we didn't chat and the wheels started to wobble. But yeah, and well, even yesterday as we started texting, it went from 2-0 to 2-2 in a span of about 3 minutes, and so yeah, it's great to be back and great to be discussing another victory against Betis, and particularly after the sort of the hour mark yesterday. I'm really glad we get to discuss a victory.
Yeah, well, I don't believe in jinxes. None of that. People know who watch games with me. I don't. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing. It doesn't matter what I do across the world from a game. It doesn't matter what jersey I'm wearing. I will say though, there is this little thing where I feel like when I have the red and yellow striped Siniera jersey from about 10 years ago now, or 11 years ago now, and I used to always wear that for El Clasico while Messi was around, and it always worked out. And since then. But again, I don't think that has to do with me, and more that has to do with lack of squad.
Yeah, I think Messi helped. Yeah,
but I do think there is something to what they do and what they wear. So when they do wear the Siniera or whatever version it is in El Clasico, I feel like it just doesn't work out there. So I think there might be something to what they wear and what they do in there and all that stuff. And the only thing I will say about Real Betis is that it is very helpful for Barcelona to play Real Betis or to play Pellegrini at all, because he is the common factor more than you and I texting or messaging each other. Because Pellegrini, other than winning the one game at the Camp Nou last season, he had lost and has now lost 15 of 16 games against Barcelona. So he is the perfect manager for Xavi and the team to get a little bit of confidence. So I think the 4 talking points we have here are pretty set in stone as the main things we have to hit. So I think where we begin is with Ferran Torres, and people who have listened to 5 headlines. It's going to be a little repetitive, but I've got some new stuff today. And first and foremost, I want to hear from you. What would be the game verdict on Ferran Torres in terms of this season? Playing him on the left, the middle, or the right, he can kind of go wherever. Then the idea of him being the starter now, just kind of being the starter over João Felix, and how you feel about his role in the squad, how that might have changed with a hat trick and these goals, if at all, or if this is just Ferran Torres feasting against Real Betis, and we kind of say it's a one-off in that way.
I mean, I think it's a one-off in the sense that, just it's a hat trick. So it was a great performance. And, it was, I hate to say right place, right time, because, that's probably true of the vast majority of goals that are scored. But it was a great combination of kind of opportunistic and clinical, but also just pretty locked in. So, I mean, I think he played very well. I like him, and I realize we'll probably veer into this territory, as we were talking before hitting record. I like him either on the left or actually in the middle. And, just watching him play yesterday, I thought he was, I don't know, I think it was kind of locked in. And, when he first, not even when he first joined Barca, but even for quite some time after he joined Barca, I mean, we had several conversations about, is it going to work out for him? What's wrong with him? The fans here, were nonplussed for a while and everything like that. I think yesterday was just, I think for a while now, it's evident he is a very good, very skilled player who, he's a guy who knows what he's doing. It's very easy when, on a big money move, when a guy's confidence gets rattled a little bit, to, go into hyperbole about what's wrong, or, was he ever that good, or should, but I think he's a very good player who's found it, at least seems to be finding a role, found his role, certainly found his confidence. And I think he believes that there was a point last year. I remember towards the end of last season, we talked about, he or Ansu Fati being odd man out, and it seemed almost. I mean, I guess Ansu did wind up leaving, so it was assuredly one of the two of them. But it, I mean, I don't know who I'd have given you odds on. It was a coin flip, maybe for me, and um, to go from that conversation to now, where in a game where Barca needs every win they can get, and even then they're not guaranteed of a repeat of last year, but at the very least to whatever we want to say, just solidify the ground under Xavi, and just build some good vibes around the team, and ideally go into uh, the next stages and the next parts of the Champions League, and ideally, hopefully, on a Copa del Rey run with just confidence, and as a team that is playing well and not just trying to uh, piecemeal together results and white knuckle their way through this thing. Um, he was a good player who played. I thought he played an excellent game, and he was, um, to an extent, being opportunistic is a skill, and he nailed it yesterday.
Well, I think it's interesting that you say about the left and center because, historically, he's been his best. Going back to his Valencia days, he's been the best on the right. But we have such a small sample size of him on the right because of Rafinha and Lamine Yamal, and even João Cancelo. If I remind you, we go back there. So he doesn't really have the opportunity to have seen that, and I think his where he goes missing the most is on the left, but it's also where he features the most. But I think his goals per 90 and his success in the middle. And even then, Vitor Roque has been brought in, but his third goal yesterday was in that 4-4-2 formation where he's playing as one of the two forwards up top with Vitor Roque. Because if you remember when Cubarsí goes down and is subbed out for João Felix in the 81st minute, I said yesterday, and I agree with it, even if Cubarsí was fit, it is an interesting move by Xavi. I think João Felix was going to enter that game no matter what. It's a matter of who he was coming in for. Uh, but I also don't know who comes out for him. If maybe it is Ferran Torres that leaves the game in that juncture, and João Felix then comes in for him, or is it Lamine Yamal who exits the game at that point? Vitor Roque goes to the right, Ferran Torres stays in the middle, and João Felix on the left. So if Cubarsí didn't pick up the knock, something different happens. But instead, because Cubarsí picked up the knock, and the other option was to put Hector Fort in as the right back and move Koundé and Araujo as the center pairing, and then stick with what would have been a 4-3-3. That would have been the other option for Cubarsí. But instead, it's João Felix because Xavi wants to win the game, and that's a substitution that, again, I credit Xavi for making in the future that he made it. For Ferran Torres, I want to add some numbers to the thing I said yesterday about Ferran. And I think, too, I want to set this up that there's two different discussions that I think people are having about Ferran Torres, and I want to be clear about the one we're having. There's the big discussion about, is he worth the 55 million euro price tag with 11 million per season amortization that came in with in 2021 rather. So we're now 2 years into a 5-year deal. Is he worth that deal? Right. And that's discussion one. Discussion two is, how good has he been this season? And what value does he have as a member of the squad in the 2023-24 season? I want to talk about that first before we talk about the first thing I set up about what he means in his contract. Because again, I want to separate those conversations, and we get too mixed up with saying, okay, does this one performance against Real Betis prove that he is worth the 55 million euros that he came in for? And I find that conversation to be exhausting because they wind up doing that every time with every match over every player's contract or their transfer fee, whatever they came in for. So for Ferran Torres this season, what I will say, he has been beyond a net positive for a player that, now this is just talking about forwards who've played 500 plus minutes for FC Barcelona at the moment. So we're not even, so Mark Yu is not on this list. But Ferran Torres is the only, this probably more of a, not a compliment to the other forwards than it is a compliment to Ferran Torres. But Torres is the only Barca forward who has overperformed his, and I know we're going to use a trite measurement, but expected goals or XG season. So Ferran Torres sits at 11 goals from 6.2 XG, which is almost double his XG. Lewandowski sits at 12 from 13 XG. Alex is 7 goals from 7 XG, so basically 1-1. Rafinha is 4 goals from 5 xG, and Lamine Yamal is 2 goals from 3.5 xG. Lamine Yamal is also with 2 goals from 3.5. Same thing with João Felix, 7 from 7. Very close to it. Same thing with Lewandowski, 12 from 13, Rafinha 4 from 5. So it's not too far off being 1-to-1 for all of the other 4 forwards. But Ferran, again, is almost double his XG. Now, the more telling stat from Steve, friend of the show, Steve, Ferran Torres is 14th in the top big 5 leagues or top 5 leagues with goals plus PKs per 90, which because of his substitute appearances this season, I think that measurement is even more significant to me, that he is 14th in per 90 goals slash PK goals behind.
Yep.
I mean, just going down the list of the figures that we're mentioning in Cubarsí from Bayer Leverkusen leads at 1.19, which is insane, by the way. Harry Kane plays for, he's the Bayern Munich forward, and the Bayern Munich forward, you can ask Lewandowski, is always high on this list every year.
And then, a good way to make a living.
And then Christian Stuani, who is the number 1 forward off the bench for none other than Girona, who leads the league. Lautaro Martinez, Kylian Mbappe, Chris Wood is kind of the surprise there, but all there in EPL. Alvaro Morata, Dennis Undaz, Diego Jota, Artem Dibik. So Girona has 2 on this list in the top 15. Erling Haaland, Jude Bellingham, and Vlahovic from Juventus. And then there's
that's pretty good.
Right. Then there's Ferran Torres. So, well, there are, yes, some surprise names on that list, but the fact that he, like, I do compare him to Stuani here, who is a plus 9.8, which is absurd, but also tells you just how important that he has been to Girona coming off the bench. But then again, Dovbyk for Girona is a 0.80. And if Lewandowski was a 0.80, by the way, per 90, then Barcelona would be leading the Liga. 100% chance that if Dovbyk and Lewandowski had the same per 90 goals plus PK goals, then Barcelona would be in a very different spot. But Ferran Torres has proven himself, other than João Felix and Rafinha, because those are the guys I'm comparing him to in this stat. He is the second forward this season. Like, statistically, like, it is Ferran Torres, which I kind of want to guide into that second conversation about, does this mean that he has then made good on his 55 mil? The answer, unfortunately, to that is still no, because of what a disappointment that last season was. Like, there is still, 2 years? Yes, there's 2 years left in this deal, and with what he makes with his wages, and I think that's where we restructure the deal, and I always want to say to people, think a little bit differently now, that Ferran Torres has now made good on what he makes in the wage bill. He is not overpaid for the goals that he gives you per 90 in the wage, like on the wage structure. The comparison to that is that Frankie de Jong, and there are people on different sides of this aisle, which is so interesting about it, but Frankie de Jong, I think, has he made or more than made the impact of 75 million euros in 2019? Yes. For his transfer fee of 75 million euros, he has been a starting starting midfielder for a team that won the Liga, won Spanish Super Cup, has contended for league titles year in and year out, and has contended for trophies, has won Copa del Reyes, and he's been a starting center midfielder for that team with also a high ceiling, going from the age of, what was he? He was 22 when he arrived, and now he's
something like that, I believe. Yeah,
and he's 26 now. So in the early part of his prime, being worth 75 million euros with the time left on his contract, he has been, 75 million euros worth. But Frankie de Jong cannot possibly give you the production that 37.5 million euros of wages can give you, right? So in the wage bill, Frankie de Jong can never provide you the value that he is equal to, but I think he is more than made up for his 75 million euro transfer fee at this point, 4 years into his Barcelona career. And that is where the nuance exists, and that's why the Ferran Torres conversation about 55 million up front from Man City, because then immediately you say Julian Alvarez. I don't want to talk about Julian Alvarez because, like, I said it then, I'll say it now. I don't think Barcelona had a inside track on Julian Alvarez. I think that Man City were always getting at Julian Alvarez, and Barcelona at the time had to just kind of, lock up with it was musical chairs, and it was a late night at the bar.
Well, and, we forget.
And Ferran Torres, here we go.
Well, I think so too. Like, I think what happens is we forget just how bleak the situation was then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was, I mean, Barca had sold whatever, like, Barca had eBayed whatever they could find around the house and done every little bit of nipping and tucking and, belt tightening and, any other cliche you can think of. And they had cobbled together this, 55 million, give or take, that could, essentially be splurged on a star level player.
Well, I mean,
And
like further context, I
yeah,
just remember it was that Ferran Torres accepted lower wages.
yeah,
And again, that deal was amortized over 5 seasons,
sure,
which is the very reason why you say, why did you spend 55 million euros the summer after you couldn't keep Lionel Messi? Because Lionel Messi with FFP could not be retained.
right,
Torres
yeah.
could be brought in because it's not about the transfer fee; it's about the
Well, yeah,
wage.
because Messi's wages were starting too high. You can only cut it so much.
Correct. I just
Like,
be very
yeah,
clear about that. Yeah.
yeah, because like you can't. Messi couldn't have done like a Shohei Otani thing and like just said like I'll play for like whatever minimum wage barely, and just so you guys can. But so yeah, and now as far as your original question was the. I mean, I do agree. I think this season, and maybe to an extent last season, or even if we want to say last season, Ferran didn't, fully, max out or justify the wages that he was paid. I'll say last year, last year we started to see that it was getting close. Like it's even if you want to fall on the no side of that, I don't think you can do it too emphatically or say that he underperformed by too much. At this point, I think the transfer fee. I think I mean Ferran Torres too is 23 years old. I guess he'll be. I just learned. Apparently, he's a leap year baby. So he'll. But
Hmm.
so he'll turn 24 in or I guess 6 in about 5 weeks. But
Real birthday. Yeah, he gets a real birthday.
yeah, yeah. But so he's still super young and has been a good player. And look, that first year when he got here it was a nightmare scenario kind of all around. I mean, like I said, the club was in just dire straits. And he was, I mean, most people don't think in the terms of, kind of the nuance that you laid out of why was it Farron and not, and so he got here and he was immediately and I remember I made this analogy at the time, but it was like, Barca and Barca fans were like, we were kids who'd been scrimping and saving our allowances for, a year or two, and you can go buy one big toy. And he was the big toy, and like it better be awesome. And so I mean, I think he came in with a lot of just the eyeballs. Like, I mean, short of just being messy, like I don't know what he would have done in that moment to justify his existence. So I think there was a year, or however long you want to say that, had to kind of kind of crawl through the muck, and there was a little bit of rehab, and I do think like I think his confidence really really took some serious body blows during that time,
Well,
and
it's like Kool-Aid can be very dogmatic too about like the idea of transfers because
yes.
like when Barcelona goes for transfers, and I think like we always forget too. It's this for every club. Like Arsenal fans are really great at this
Mm.
too. It's this revisionist history on the players that came in to flop that didn't work out for clubs, and so we kind of forget all of those all in totality, and they just become these jokes and memes and things. And then you only remember that the likes of Ronaldinho and Rivaldo and Romario. I know I'm mentioning a lot of Brazilians, but even Luis Suarez and I'd say Ter Stegen, like the ones that worked out, like the home run hits
I mean,
on.
God, even like Neymar, even like I
Yes,
mean,
of course. I mean,
it worked. Yeah,
top 30 player that ever played for Barcelona, and so
yeah,
the transfers that hit are the ones that you truly truly remember, and then
yes.
the rest of the team too is bolstered by these players that you won't even speak the wages that they make. Like for example, I'm transitioning this into talking about Lamine Yamal here. Lamine Yamal reportedly makes 1.6 euros per year, like because he just signed that professional contract at 16, and with that contract, apparently some of the negotiation was that he would make first team appearances or be a part of the first team dynamic. But the number itself was based on him being a 16-year-old signing his first professional contract still. And so that number wasn't going to be inflated because he could have, been a 16-year-old who didn't work out in the first team. And so he's at 1.6. Balde's still at 1.6, but he's still waiting for that other contract, by the way. That one is going to go up. But Vitor Roque was brought in. He's at 3.5. And so I also want to temper the expectations of that. Like, he is paid at 3.5. To put an example here, that Lewandowski's at 26 million euros. You got Rafinha at 12.5. Ferran Torres is at 10. So for Vitor Roque to come in at 3.5, he's being paid as an 18-year-old forward who's kind of given time to become a goal scorer and a star, and he's just a supplementary piece at the moment. Again, and Lamine Yamal at 1.6, and then Fermin Lopez is at just 250,000 this moment.
Yeah.
I believe he's also going to be renewing for a much higher number once that contract, and it's still, yes, Balde and Fermin Lopez, and is it Araujo, I believe, who's the other one still waiting for that jump
Yeah, he hasn't gotten done yet.
Right. So he's at 7 million, and he will likely jump up to close to 10. So those three, they're still waiting on those contracts to be. Same thing as Gavi, 6.8. That will also rise. But again, coming off the books will be no one. Yeah, no, Cancelo and some of the other ones, and Alonso, Roberto, who don't make much at all. So Barcelona actually will not be losing much salary this season.
When I keep thinking, like, how are some of these contracts not over yet? Like, some of those, like, zombies that just, like, they're gonna follow us to the grave.
Frankie de Jong still at 2026. Yeah, I mean,
Lewandowski. At least he's here and he's, like, contributing and helping. Like, I feel like there's still, like, Arda Turan is somehow still hurting this team.
He is not. That was 2 years ago, though, which is absurd.
Yeah, right?
Rafinha and Ferran Torres are the big ones. They're at 2027. I mean, so
yeah.
That's still on for 4 more seasons. So anyway, but talking about Lamine Yamal, whose contract is for 3 more years, so 2026, which is, again, an insane number. And that is what Ferran Torres, as that transition goes, that is what Ferran Torres is battling against, is the contracts of these, like, prodigies, that these prospects that are just, like, over and exceeding at 16 and 17 beyond what they could ever be paid for the first team. I mean, and that's why their wages are so inflated, because by 20 they're signing these huge deals because they're golden boy. I mean, look at Pedri, right? Golden boy by 20, or he was 19 when he got that award. Gavi was 18 when he got that award, and you push the limit. So yesterday, Lamine Yamal was fantastic. Where up front, I want to almost ask you, but also kind of tell you that that was his best match for in an FC Barcelona uniform, because regardless of because he didn't score a goal, but everything else, like just mentioning the stats here with the 5 successful dribbles, the 3 key passes. Obviously, the second goal was all him, the assist to Ferran Torres. I mean, he still didn't finish it, but I mean, just holding off the man and showing everything. Strength. There were twice he held off his the defender, the interception. He had even a headed clearance, like 11 of 14 on his duels. He was kicking the ball away from Luis Enrique and Abner on that side, trying to get down, and there was nothing Abner could do. One of his matches for Real Betis this season. He had the most dribbles. He also had the most tackles in the game with 3 chances created. I always say, like, you start Rafinha over Lamine Yamal because of his defensive work rate, but yesterday Lamine Yamal defensively had a game beyond or just as good as what Rafinha could have done or better. 58 touches in the game, 5 ball recoveries, even fouled once. Like, he was really, really, really good in that match. And to a point where every match we wonder, what would this team look like, of the good and the bad, if Ousmane Dembele had resigned and was still around, because of what he meant for Xavi's team. But yesterday, Lamine Yamal was so good in 1v1s. Then when they had to double him, he was consistently making the right decisions. He was skating by multiple players. And when you have a winger doing that, it's crazy, because in Xavi's system, when you have a winger doing that, you can win games and you can score a lot of goals. And it doesn't matter how much your forwards want to miss their chances. Chances are created that the forwards are going to put in.
They're going to score in spite of themselves when you know when you have that guy.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened yesterday, because Lamine Yamal was just that good. I said it on the 5 headlines, and I'll repeat it again. Ferran Torres had the hat trick. He was excellent, yes, but Lamine Yamal was my man of the match because he's the one that, from a tactics perspective, put Real Betis on their heels. And
Yes.
numerically, there was nothing they could do. Barcelona always had an extra body, always had an extra man, and he was just too dangerous for Real Betis yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I think it's fair enough to give the man of the match to Ferran Torres, but in terms of who was the in terms of both level and kind of tangible results, I guess, like the tallies, that fair enough. But I mean, Lamine Yamal, just in terms of just his impact, like, I mean, you mentioned all the numbers. I mean, those are tangible impact, but even there was an intangible element to him, which is, I mean, my biggest frustration, especially over the last, I don't know, 2 months, let's say, with Barca, has been something we talked about a little bit last year. Even when things were going well, it was kind of Dembele was the only, I don't know what the word is you would even say. I mean, I guess, like, I don't want to say difference maker, but yeah, X factor, just sort of, yeah, deadly, sort of an apex predator is like a term that I sometimes use. Like, and my biggest frustration with this team, especially after they started the season pretty well and they had some gritty performances with the comebacks and things like that. It feels like it's gone into a lull where you have a bunch of objectively talented players, but none of it seems to be coalescing into anything legitimately dangerous. And Lamine Yamal yesterday sort of delivered the. I mean, that's it. It's the X factor. It's that element of not only are we facing a bunch of just really talented and good players, like, there's a guy who will potentially embarrass us, who will potentially rip your heart out when you're not expecting it, and you have to worry about that too. On top of marking Robert Lewandowski and marking Ferran Torres and all that, all the other, you know, just tall orders that the day at the office against Barca presents.
Well, I do think that, we didn't really talk about the mentality of Ferran Torres, and I would say that, me, I always kind of not say that that's less important, but I always say that, like, the skill and the talent and that
Mm.
kind of stuff, pierces through when the stats and the numbers and stuff come to rue. But, Ferran Torres has been pretty honest about the mental part of the game, and I think it is almost a cheat code and I say the same thing about any of the major academies, like even the Fabrica as well, especially the Fabrica and Barcelona's. And Barcelona, obviously, with La Masia, and then Athletic Club, their academy as well. There is something very special about. Actually, we also see that. I'm throwing their academy as well. Um, there is something about the mentality of these youngsters where even if they don't survive at Barcelona, so many of them. I go back to a youngster that left years and years ago, John Terral, who is 16, went to Arsenal, was one of Arsenal's after Cesc Fabregas was one of the big recruits for them, who left the academy at 16, and I think he basically made his time at Birmingham City, and he bounced around, whether it was EPL for just like a hot minute, and then mostly the Championship for his career. And I use him as an example because, again, he was highly coveted, moves for a money move to 16 from Arsenal from Barcelona to Arsenal, and even that kind of kid has the mentality that I'm a professional footballer. From the age of like 12 to 13, they're going to be professional footballers. It's just a matter of where. Even in the third or fourth division, I tweeted out yesterday a name, Jorge Alistui, who is the same age-ish as Gabi, but Gabi was a level up. But he was the same one in the team of Marcasido, Xavi Simons. Like, that was a crowded midfield at the U16 level, and he winds up having just a terrible injury that basically destroyed his career. And so he's now playing in the third division, and he played earlier this year against Barca Athletic. But he's still going to be, I mean, I know third division semi-pro, but he still has ambitions at 20 of making it to the second division, right? Like, right? There's a mentality to these kids that is, I don't want to take that for granted. That these kids, like Lamine Hall, is already treats himself like a professional athlete, and in all the different ways, like in between the ears, and they're so far ahead. Like, there's no learning to do. Like, the learning curve is already, you eat, you sleep, if you're still in school, you study, but you treat yourself if you
Yeah.
come from our academy like a professional athlete, and
Yes.
you want to make it. You're going to have to treat yourself as
When you
such.
do it a certain way, there's a
Yeah.
standard that's set. When I think too, it's And I mean, this is well trodden ground just in sports discussion in general. But I mean, the even your most kind of middling or subpar professional athlete has a just an innate self confidence and just self belief that sort of the we normies just cannot fathom. Like we laugh. We've you and I talk about the NBA a lot. Just and you'll get a random gunner. You get a Dion Waiters type who will talk about how he genuinely believes that he is never not the best player on the floor, and he thinks he's the best player in the NBA. If he just gets a chance, like he could be LeBron and that kind of thing. And
For the old heads, the name I always want to say is Ricky Davis, the old Celtics.
Oh God, yeah.
Even people don't care about basketball. Google Ricky Davis and just type in like Ricky Davis like confidence or stories.
Yeah.
Like he is an all-time irrational confidence legend. Like he might be the guy.
Yes, he's way up there. Yeah. So, and the thing is, I don't, and yeah, I mean, of course I laugh at him, and like when the Ricky Davises and Dion Waiters of the world say that kind of thing. But like, I mean, I don't firsthand get it, but I get that that's what got you here. And also, there's the reality that you were probably well into your formative years, possibly into adulthood, the first time you consistently met people who were better than you at this. Like these guys, the worst player in La Liga was a prodigy and just a wonder kid, and was probably well into his formative years before running into people where you're like, oh no, damn, these guys are like legit, faster and stronger and bigger than me.
But that's why they play them groups up from down. So like Balde was first.
Yeah.
Like Balde got punched in the mouth for the first time when he was playing with the U16s when he was 14. So that like he was already 2 age groups up. And then when Balde was 15, he was playing with the U17, right? And so like these kids are getting punched in the mouth early on. Like Gabi was 15 when he played his first U19 match. And you can see that he was, unafraid.
And those are big years too, as far as like just kids growing up and putting on muscle, and a 15-year-old who hasn't fully filled out, and a 19-year-old who might be filling out a bit more quickly. Like that's a chasm. Like you really have to bridge a gap there.
I speak from my own personal experience. When I played high school soccer here, when I was training with the full team, we weren't a big enough team, so everybody did preseason together. I was still 13, about to turn 14 when we started our preseason when I was in 9th grade. And so when the kids who were going into 12th grade, who even had a birthday already, so there was one guy who was 18 and I was 13, right? And we were playing, and then where I played the sport, it was just a lot of like more wrestling on a terrible field than it was like actually like technical ability to take the ball around. So one of the drills we would do is that one where I can't remember the name of it, where you start on two sides and they just throw it in the middle, and it's a 50-50. You've got to make contact on the ball and win the tackle, right? I go in and I'm, what am I, 106 pounds, and at that right at 13, and this kid is 190, which is a number I'll never hit because he was like 6'2", 6', he was a big dude, and I mean, and so we collide in the middle, and I tore a muscle in my back, and I missed like half of the season, and it was just it's just that's what happens, and it wasn't even a matter of mentality, but it was just like it was a different body, it was a different guy.
Yeah, like there just comes a point where you run into a physical object that's just bigger than what you can move, or
talent that's insurmountable. Which, by the way, then now we're transitioning real quick because we have more things to talk about here. I transitioning into Pau Cubarsí because that kid very much like Lamine Yamal. Like you see the face, it's 16, but then you watch him glide around the field, and as a winger, you're like, okay, like it makes sense. But center backs, there's no hiding that. Like you've got to be physical, you've got to have like composure, you've got to look like a man, you've got to look like an adult. And Pau Cubarsí, you see it, and I'm like, well, physically he doesn't necessarily look like a man, but also like you see his face, and the illusion is completely destroyed. I don't want to spoil the prestige here, but you understand this is just a magic trick that he is putting on. This now, happy birthday to him today, Feliz cumpleaños.
Oh yeah.
In the 81 minutes, he had 69 touches, 58 of 62 of his
Yeah, I
passes,
had it all up from the athletic article too. Yeah, go on.
5 long balls, not dispossessed at all, 1 tackle, 1 block, 2 clearances, 1 interception, 2 ball recoveries, 3 of 4 in his duels. He was not dribbled past, and he did not commit a single foul.
Yeah,
In
that's
terms
insane.
of, I think of when he was, what was he, 19 when he debuted Ronald Araujo for the first team, and he gets that red card after like 10 minutes, right?
Yep.
There's that kind of debut in the Liga, and then there's Cubarsí's, where yes, of course he goes off injured. He would have loved to continue to stay on the game, but I don't think it's going to long-term injury. Either way,
That doesn't seem to. Yeah, like there doesn't seem to be any big
it was
concern at this moment.
so. It just I don't want to use hyperbole on a 17-year-old center back. I don't want to do this, but he was trusted in playing as the left center back as a right-footed player. He consistently, how many times? I was thinking about this yesterday too. Left-footed Clement Lenglet. I'm so sorry. I don't want to drag Clement Lenglet because he's a great center back that Aston Villa or AC Milan whoever wants to buy. Definitely buy him if you're listening to this, AC Milan president or Clement Lenglet, fantastic. But if in his time at Barcelona, a left-footed Clement Lenglet playing on the left, how many times did he hit that lofted ball from the left center back position over to the right back in as he was moving forward? How many times did he, on a dime, hit that pass, bypassing the forward, like over the head of the center forward and bypassing the other center back into the path of an on-rushing right back? How many times did Clement Lenglet make that pass? I could count on, I mean, he would make the long diagonal over to the winger, but I'm talking about that little lofted one.
Really, like that's like the chip shots. Like, I mean, really, like your short game. Yeah.
He made that pass 4 times yesterday in just 90 minutes. Like there is.
Okay, I didn't know it was 4, but as you said it, I was thinking of kind of a couple of the ones that he. Well, his. So in that same article that I was reading about him today, what is his name? Albert Buch, who was his U13s coach, is already invoking Carlos Puyol.
I don't want to use names, but how about this?
His old coach did. We can just piggyback on that.
The easy thing I'm saying is like based on what if he doesn't have a growth spurt at the moment? What if Eric Garcia was better at defending?
Just better, yeah.
What if Eric was better? He was a very highly rated center back prospect.
Yeah.
Man City and all that stuff. But yes, what if Eric at the moment?
Yeah, because I say that without like no shame. It's not like Eric Garcia stinks or whatever. But like, what if he was better?
Well, yeah, but what if Eric Garcia was starting center back for Barcelona as opposed to starting center back for Girona? Who, yes, I know leading the league, but you understand the level. So yeah, what if Eric Garcia was better? But I said it on the 5 headlines. I'll repeat it again. Composure. Every time I've ever watched him, and I first saw him with the U16s, every time I've ever seen, and he was 14 at the time, by the way, every time I've ever seen Cubarsí, composure is the name of the game. He defensively, his positioning is always good. He doesn't, like, there aren't these outrageous athletic dives that he makes. I mean, when he got hurt yesterday, the step in, really good timing, really good composure, and an experience way beyond 17. And again, I'm not using hyperbole. It is difficult to be a center back, and you have to be consistent. You have to get minutes, and he's just not going to get that. So I'm totally pumping the brakes and saying to you that next season, I expect him to have a similar role, flirting with the first team, basically the 5th center back. Even if they sell a center back, maybe he's the 4th center back, and maybe we're going to.
Yeah, I could see him being the 4th one. I mean, if this continues, if he stays healthy and the kind of this developmental curve, like if he doesn't hit any stumbling blocks in his development or just his acclimation to the first team, I could see him being 4th. But yeah,
I don't expect that for 2 more years until he's 18, and then I expect him to be a part of the first team because his ceiling is just higher than. And it's interesting because Faye, he just came back from a suspension and then got another red card. And his highlights have been really fun with Barca Athletic. Like he makes some insanely athletic tackles. And then he also has a tremendous long ball. Faye's long ball and free kick stuff is really, really cool to watch. Really good technical skill there. But he is much more of this, highs and lows, right? But Cubarsí has been his partner with Barca Athletic before Fall came into the team, and it has just been they've been such an interesting tandem because Faye, again, the highs and the lows, but then Cubarsí has just been straight down the middle every single match. You expect exactly what you're going to get from Pau Cubarsí. He has made some defensive mistakes, but so has Ronald Araujo this season, by the way, at the first.
Oh, I mean, no one's going to go through and never make a mistake, but you get a sense of there does seem to be a kind of an innate calm to how he does what he does. It's a little bit of like he seems to have a very good sense of where to be. Yeah, it's one of those. It's kind of the. I mean, it goes back to one of those like old Cruyffisms where, you know, if you stand where you're supposed to be, you shouldn't have to sprint. And so, like, if you've taken a couple of steps in the right direction, you don't have to scramble to cover. Like you at that point, it's just a quick slide over, and that applies probably in defense in any team sport, whether it's basketball, American football, European football. Just if you with an efficiency of movement get close to where you're supposed to be, but keep your options open and all the account for different variables. It doesn't have to look spectacular, but the result is the totality of it is spectacular, even though it's not highlight reel stuff. It's more so just you know it's wonderful when you don't have to think about the sort of the exploits of one of your center backs. Like just
And these platitudes and truths that are weird. I know his team coach said
mm,
it's 20 years since Carlos Puyol,
mm,
but yeah, Juan Mercat, who's a well-respected, covers Barca's academy and stuff, a Catalan journalist, he said it was the best center back prospect he's seen in 20 years, and I agree with that. Like I've said before, like the names that come up right away, like Eric Garcia, Mark Muniesa. Now you're already talking about Gerard Piqué, and then before that you're going to Puyol, and now you're back 25 years, and that's the class that Pau Cubarsí is in. He just is. It's so difficult because I'm not talking about his weaknesses here. At 17, you're allowed to not have us talk about your weaknesses, and anything you contribute to the first team, as I always say, is like beyond anything, right? So I think the it's this weird thing where it is true that he is the best center back prospect in 20 years in the academy, in the same way that Lamine Yamal. It is not a comparison to Messi, but he is the best prospect with the highest ceiling on the wing since Messi. Like that is what Lamine Yamal is, and I'm only speaking of that because of the age of which he is and the contribution to the first team he already has at 16. And the reminder is that the future is totally unknown because Ansu Fati was the best, goal scoring per 90 prospect that had come up since Boyan. And that's how quick that went. And those stories, there are some parallels in how that story turned out by the time that they were 20 years old already. And so you never know what the future holds. But in this moment, right, we're trying to, as I always say, when I talk about these kids, I'm trying to capture this moment in time. And in this moment of time, that is what Cubarsí is at 17. And that is what Lamine Yamal is at 16. That is what they are in this moment, just, with the bird's eye view of this tiny little, again, like little moment on the timeline. So very excited about Cubarsí. I'll be excited every time we see him this season because his ceiling is so high. Don't expect him to take anybody's starting spots. He is the fifth center back right now. But the fact that he had the performance he did and he took what I saw at the U16 level and he converted that to Real Betis on the road in Andalusia. Uh, that is just how good I know he was going to be with between the years, and he exceeded my expectations, which is why I'm so excited about this moment for him. Okay, last topic. Let's see if we can do this in like 6 or 7 minutes because I know he'll get ornery with us if we go too long on it. The 63rd minute, Lewandowski comes out of the game for Vitor Roque, which I've said about Vitor Roque, it's going to be a slow progression, and I just because social media discourse is every hour and every minute, I feel like we have to have these conversations about Vitor Roque, which I'm not interested in doing. The time that he's already gotten under Xavi is fine by me. I think he did come in with a little bit of a knock, and even if he comes off the bench in every match throughout the remainder of the season, because Barca have already got Athletic Club on Wednesday, and as I said yesterday, I think Lamine Yamal played the 90 because Xavi is preparing to start João Felix, Lewandowski, and Ferran Torres against Athletic Club. I think that is the idea. And same thing with Vitor Roque. He will not be starting at Athletic Club, so don't get crazy about that. Maybe he'll start next weekend, but I think Lewandowski is going to be the regular starter every single time. But it was very telling that Lewandowski, I don't need to look this up. I think for the Yeah, because unless he was injured for the first time ever, or he came out with somebody else, but for the first time ever, Robert Lewandowski in a Barcelona uniform was the first and only solo sub to come out of a Barcelona game. Is that the
Wow.
first time that happened? I can't think of another. Again, unless he was injured, that would have been, or came off with someone else. That would have been the first
Yeah.
time he alone
No, but
was
that totally tracks.
right. I think that's
Just,
right.
I mean, given his usage and just given, yeah, given what he's been and given his usage, I mean, maybe there was an instance we don't remember, but just the what you're describing, that makes sense.
And so, what does this mean? Is this growth for Xavi in making decisions? Is this like how much do we read into that moment? Because that is a brave thing. I know it sounds crazy, but that is a brave thing for Xavi to do. And if it's what the not to call them fringe, but like if it's what the people on social media are screaming for and pining for, game in and game out, there's usually a lack of sense to it. There's a reason why Xavi, who knows much more than us, wouldn't do the thing that you've been wanting and calling for 2 months, or I mean, obviously Vita Roque 3 weeks ago, but the point is, right? Lewandowski coming out of the game no matter who, right? Or like Lewandowski being the first to sit on the bench when he is the issue, because that's what it was. Like he was kind of the issue yesterday, in that 11, and everything else was kind of working, right? So he's the one who comes off because he was kind of the problem. Which, not to say a problem, but you use your sub. So it's like, even if I don't want to say that he was the problem, but he was contributing the least. So he was the
Yes.
guy
Yeah.
to exit the game.
And
That
that's not. Yeah, and like that happens
But that's
sometimes.
brave, and that's what I'm saying. Like that is
Yeah.
brave, probably to do to take out Lewandowski, even though we know, yes, the truth was that he was the least influential player, so he should have
Yes.
been the first, like in a system of meritocracy, which is what Xavi calls for. So I don't know. Is there a bigger story here, or is this really just an instant of Xavi, kind of being brave, but also Lewandowski being fair to accept that Vita Roque is now in the squad, so you are going to lose some minutes now.
So
Like, your spot is secure, but you're going to lose some minutes to this kid that we spent a lot of money on.
okay, so I have a question on this. I guess like just and it's a so on the one hand, I think Xavi was being smart, and I think also with the um, I don't know how close anything has ever come to, you know, is the whole like is Javi's job in peril kind of those discussions that have happened. But anyway,
Not till the summer. I don't think it's till the summer. I think
no,
what all year. Yeah.
but anyway, like I think but even when those murmurs start, it chums the water for kind of anyone who talks about it, people online, reporters and whatever. Look, maybe there's an element of Javi was trying to do it in a way where, let's have success and keep everyone happy. But then, if you reach a point where, Lewandowski is supposed to be, I guess, the first name on the lineup card, and whatever, apparently his starting is non-negotiable and all of that. But at some point, I mean, it comes down. I wonder if Xavi just did look and say, like, dude, we have to worry about your ego while the rest of the team is, not succeeding to the extent that we possibly could. They're, people are at least openly contemplating the fact that I might get canned in a few months, and just, like score some goals or, be treated, at least, I'm not saying be treated like just any old random rank and file player, but no, like you have to make a contribution. Like yeah, last year was great, yay, but it's not. I don't know. Like Robert Lewandowski is a good player. He was fantastic last year. He's had a fantastic career, everything like that. But if I don't know, he's not like a club icon, like just unimpeachable club legend, whatever Catalan hero sort of thing. Where like, no, dude, you're a striker who's closer to 40 than he is to 32. So, or maybe at least definitely to 30. So yeah, that's how that goes. I don't know why we have to be so worried about like Robert Lewandowski getting the feels, because like, dude, it's okay.
Well, what I'll say too is that I do think, to put this conversation to bed, I
Mm.
think people will get frustrated again in the future now, because if you're going to put Vitor Roque in a forward line with João Felix and Lamine Yamal and Ferran Torres, the game
Uh-huh.
to do that in is in a wide open game
Yep.
that you're looking to kind of try to steal a win there because you conceded the 2 goals. And Isco was great too. I just want to shout out Isco. You
Yeah,
know,
that was
I'm glad he's a former Real Madrid fan. I mean, a player, because I think they like kind of kicked him to the curb, and nothing makes me happier than Real Madrid kicking a player to the curb than him succeeding.
Yeah, they kind of did him dirty. I feel like they put him on the bench for like 3 years,
Yeah, when he
right
wasn't
after he was one of their heroes.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I it gives me a
Yeah.
little shout for
Yep.
it there. Yeah, Isco was great. Brought them back in the game, which is what he's been doing this year. Don't
Mhm.
be surprised. Isco was great. But then after Barcelona, yeah, looked like they were bottling it, struggling in the second half. The guy, it was good on Xavi to reopen that game, but again, moving forward now, especially starting on Wednesday against Athletic Club, do not expect that to happen again. I think Lewandowski in those small spaces again. I think Ferran Torres and Lamine Yamal and Vitor Roque, like that game was built for them to go up and down and quickly. And so you're not going to see those opportunities again. Like it's not going to happen. Like teams don't. If anything, Napoli's actually one of the next examples of a team that does kind of allow that to happen, and that game can get open. But in the Champions League, 2 legs, do you really want that to happen? And that's a debate for a different time.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's at the very least, it's good to have, I guess, two things. One, it's good to have different gears that you can shift to based on I mean, maybe the style of your opponent, but also just the situation that you're in. Like if you need a goal, like there has to be different ways that you play. And if your ostensible, primary goal scorer isn't giving you much, like you need to have somewhere to turn. So like on the one hand, so it's I think it's valuable first of all to have those different gears to shift to and know what they are. And also it's nice to see a willingness to actually do it without kind of without worrying about more like kind of tabloidy fallout and repercussions and stuff like that. 'Cause, no, I mean like there's a collective job to do. Just we need to score more goals than these guys, and you're not helping us right now. That doesn't mean we're on the outs, like or you're getting dropped all the time. But no, I mean there's we need to do the thing.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what makes Wednesday so
Yeah,
difficult. You're playing a MMS against Athletic Club, and it's a Copa del Rey, so it's a knockout competition. It doesn't
yeah.
matter how many goals are scored against you, and that's kind of what makes that game, or what will make that game interesting, because it's not say a bummer, but it's rough being a Barcelona manager, because if they go down 2-0 in that game, and then Xavi has to go for it in a cup game on the road, right? Like it does matter the difference between Xavi losing 2-0 and 4-0. Like that does matter. So like if you go and you're knocked out, but you're knocked out either way. It doesn't actually matter, but it does matter, because 4-0 and 2-0 matter. So it's rough being a Barcelona manager, because you get bit in the press, and the pressure gets amplified if you lose by a certain number, or if you lose in a certain way. And yeah, it is what it is. So that's my thing about Wednesday. But I do hope Xavi is brave and goes for it on Wednesday. Last little here, I I said it in the five headlines with a lot, pretty with articulation, which I failed to do right there. With good articulation yesterday about Iñaki Peña. Iñaki Peña to me, not to oversimplify it, but he is a good shot stopper. He is good enough with his feet. He is above average in that category. Again, they're saying he's one of the best in the world at that. Iñaki Peña, from when I saw him with Barca B, he has always struggled commanding the air, and that unfortunately communicating has been something that has reared its ugly head of multiple times this season, and that has been the issue. That is why he can never be a number one for Barcelona. But I do still think that he could be a number one somewhere. I think Galatasaray was actually his level, and I think he will be a number one somewhere. But his lack of communication and lack of commanding the air is just it's average, and Barcelona need above average, because they expect to win every match. And they
Well,
expect
basically, I think like he seems like a goalkeeper he needs a veteran he needs veteran defenders in front of him who basically like don't need you always need to communicate with the defenders, but you almost just with a veteran back line that almost doesn't need the communication because they're so kind of ingrained in their jobs, and ideally sort of big guys who can command the air when he cannot.
Well, I mean, Araujo's been around
Yeah.
for a few years now, sure, but he's still 24, and he's the kind of defender that's just going to go for it, though. So you've got to call him off. And
Yes.
then Pau Cubarsí's 16, or now, yeah, 16 yesterday, and
Right.
Uday is also not really he's not known to be a communicator. Same thing with
No.
when he was in Sevilla. That's why he had Fernando
Yeah.
in front of him, protecting him, and a veteran goalkeeper. I think every time his goalkeeper behind him was in their mid-30s. Like he always had an older goalkeeper, an experienced goalkeeper behind him. So there wasn't, and Mbalde's 20 years old. So
Yeah, that's
they're
the thing. They're either children or not. That's not their leadership style.
which is not supporting Iñaki Peña. So I hope they're saying he gets
No.
healthy soon. But that's what I mean. Iñaki Peña has been good enough to be a backup, but that's what he is. And now Barcelona need their number one back. He's not a 1B in the way that
No, he's a number 2, and
yeah,
that's okay.
yeah. He's not as good, unfortunately, like Real Madrid have Lunin and Kepa. He is not as good
Yeah.
as they are number ones in other teams. And Kepa, you could question him as well. And then that's what happens with goalkeepers too. Like things go wrong a little bit, and then it's very difficult. They need a lot of matches to change perception in a way that other outfield players can go on a little 3-game hot streak, and now we talk about them in a different way.
Well, also the thing with goalkeepers, and this is fairly straightforward, but it's if you're a midfielder or a left back or whatever, a winger, and you have a 3 or 4 game slump where not complete nightmares, but you're not playing well. If the rest of your teammates are playing well enough, or the results go your way, or whatever, you can kind of fly under the radar. If you're struggling as a goalkeeper, that is laid bare like all the time. Even if you're making the saves and your team is still kind of winning, but it feels kind of slapdash and everything, it feels like a white knuckle roller coaster ride. It's out there for all to see, and so it's very difficult to hide. I think that's where in addition to sort of the other challenges and difficulties of being good at that job, I think where it's very difficult is it's incredibly difficult to hide if you're just not playing well.
Right. Yeah. So we're an hour into a podcast about FC Barcelona. And the big picture here is that Barcelona is 7 points off of Real Madrid, 8 points off Girona. Girona yesterday against Sevilla looked like they're going to win the Liga, which I think we all kind of do hope happens if it's not FC Barcelona. Obviously, I think even there's obviously a little part of me that's just like, yeah, I mean, it'd be great if Girona won the Liga too. Just and in terms of the Real Madrid Almeria stuff, because we're an hour in to an FC Barcelona podcast, like all I'll say is Visca El Almeria, like the VAR report, which you can hear the audio to, and as well as again just listening to the manager and everybody else involved, the players. I think Almeria, we're Real side. I don't need to add any context to what Almeria and VAR haven't already. So yeah, it's absurd. I'm not going to even say conspiracy, but it is absurd. It was a joke. It was terrible. And what I go back to is in all sides, for Barcelona, against Barcelona, and certainly for Real Madrid. It's as I also remind you too, Celta de Vigo in non-Barca, non-Real Madrid games in the first third of the season, they had many gripes. So I mean, you could go and ask every club in the Liga this season when they've been hard done by, and every club is hard done by at one moment. That's against Real Madrid though. Unfortunate. I'll say it this way. It's actually almost unfortunate that it was Real Madrid, because now the story becomes about Real Madrid as opposed to what it would have been if it was, say, Almeria against even Real Sociedad,
Mallorca.
Right, Mallorca, right? Because if that happens at Almeria, Mallorca, we just get to say the thing that is true this season with full voice, and that is the refereeing, and even with VAR, has been less than stellar, actually bad, so many times this season. Where
I was going to say it veers into atrocious fairly frequently.
You're going to get it wrong with VAR that many times. I mean, my goodness, like
what are we even doing here? Then why do we even like? I mean, I'm out on VAR kind of just as a thing, but I mean everything, because I know in England it keeps sort of, it ruins the flow. It takes all it takes away from the game. The promise that what it was billed as, the promise that was sold was, Yeah, we're gonna, we're gonna sap the emotion and the flow from the game. You're gonna have to watch, a couple of men go watch television for a second, a few times a match. But don't worry, we're gonna get it all right. If
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean,
gonna get it all right, then what the hell are we doing?
yeah, I mean, I want to like, I know people hate this comparison, but again,
Mm,
it's in the podcast. I'll do it. That one of the things I would do for people know that I've worked with Major League Soccer before. One of the things I would do sometimes I would do the basically the instant replay, like the rules, where we go through the different 50-50, questionable calls and moments from the weekend, and we go through that. And having done that clip and now covering and watching as much league as I do, I can tell you that MLS officials have gotten more right with VAR than the Liga officials have this season. And that is a huge indictment on the Liga. Again, I'm not, it's not necessarily a comparison between the leagues, but I'm telling you, like, there's a standard of official that we expect across different leagues. And if you expect a certain standard of player in MLS to compare that to La Liga, then the standard of MLS official to La Liga official you'd think would be a similar disparity, right? You'd think that that would be a similar jump, but that has not been the case of my experience this season working with both of those leagues. And yeah, so not to make it, not to say the Liga that not to say that Real Madrid is off the hook and that there's not corruption and conspiracy and all the things that you want to have fun with. What I'm saying is that unfortunately for me, Real Madrid was the team because now that's the conversation and not that refereeing in La Liga needs to have an overhaul. And because of Barcelona and Negreira, it's the same thing. The media and the reporters and everything, because it's Real Madrid and because it's Barcelona with Negreira, you're throwing this conversation about competency just right out the window and saying, okay, this is just because of some, 100-year deeply rooted political thing that is constantly happening with these victimized big
Yeah, the
clubs.
whole conversation becomes a conversation of corruption rather than competence.
Right. Which I think is stupid. And I think Ameria, this was so bad that if Ameria wants to cry competency, if they want to cry conspiracy, Ameria is a team that is not one in the Liga. And if there's anybody that's going to be able to cry, it's going to
Mhm.
be Ameria. They have
Yeah.
a full right to cry and scream as loud as they want. So, FC
Yes.
Barcelona fans, just support your Ameria brethren in the moment, but you don't need to
Yes.
scream conspiracy, scream competency, because that's what I'm yelling from the highest mountain. So, all right, that will wrap up today's show. Follow Emile down in the show notes below.
Mhm.
Same thing. I'm nearing 2,000 social media followers on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And I know
Nice.
it's a dying platform, but let me have 2,000 in the ashes. So I think I'm like 500 people away or something like that. So yeah, if you listen to the show, follow me on X. That'd be great. But more importantly, if you can support on the Patreon or merch store, those are the most. That money is money that goes directly into supporting the show and supporting me into making long form podcasts like this with the guests. And if you're still listening, you've been devout to me, and I appreciate the support this year. As I've been saying, it's been a rough year on the personal side of things, behind the scenes. So I try my best to have guests on throughout the week, but with Barcelona playing twice a week, it's difficult to make 3 shows in a week and things like that. So I appreciate everybody's support this year. But again, close Facebook group, Discord, you can continue the community as I can't be a part of those conversations sometimes. And then again, Patreon, merch store, those are the best way to support the show. Most importantly, though, just listening, subscribing, and all that stuff. That's the best way as well to support the show. Until next time, though, we'll talk to you soon. And Forza Barca.
Forza Barca.